Welcome back to Pep Talk with David. I'm your host, and today we are starting with one of the most important peptides in modern medicine, the GLP-1. You may not have heard of GLP-1 by name, but I am pretty sure you probably have. You almost cannot escape it. But you've almost certainly heard of semaglutide or liraglutide if you haven't heard GLP-1. You've probably also heard the brand names Ozempic, Wegovy, Victoza, which are all GLP-1 receptor agonists. They're among the most prescribed and most discussed drugs in the world right now, and to understand them, you need to understand what GLP-1 actually is. GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide 1. And it's a naturally occurring hormone, a peptide, like we talked about in the first episode, something naturally produced in your gut. Specifically, it's released from cells called L cells, which line the small intestine and colon. When you eat a meal, one particularly that has a lot of carbohydrates or fats, these cells release GLP-1 into your bloodstream. So your body makes this peptide every single day. This is not synthetic. Multiple times a day, this is released into your body. So what does GLP-1 do naturally? Well, according to research published in the Journal of Diabetes Care and the New England Journal of Medicine, GLP-1 has several key roles in the body. Let's discuss them. First, it stimulates the pancreas to release insulin, but only when blood sugar is elevated. This is called glucose-dependent insulin secretion. It's an important safety feature of our bodies. Our natural GLP-1 does not push insulin when we don't need it. Second, it suppresses glucagon. Glucagon is the hormone that tells your liver to release stored sugar. So GLP-1 dials that back when glucose is already present, which helps prevent blood sugar spikes. Third, it slows gastric emptying, meaning it slows how fast food moves from our stomachs into the small intestine. And this helps us to feel full, satiated longer. Fourth, it acts on the brain. GLP-1 receptors exist in the hypothalamus and brainstem, and when activated, they reduce appetite and food-seeking behavior. This is a central mechanism of GLP-1, not just a gut effect. Now, here's the problem with our natural GLP-1. It breaks down very quickly. Your body has an enzyme called DPP4, dipeptidyl peptidase 4. Yeah, I had to write that down. I don't know how to say that. It degrades GLP-1 within minutes of it being released. So the natural version of GLP-1 has a very short half-life, if you will. That's why pharmaceutical companies develop GLP-1 receptor agonists, synthetic versions of this peptide or molecules that mimic it, and they're engineered to resist that rapid breakdown and last much longer in our body. So let's talk briefly about the approved medications. Semaglutide, something that maybe you've heard of. It's the active compound in Ozempic and Wegovy. It was approved by the FDA for type 2 diabetes way back in 2017. But for chronic weight management in 2021, it's already been around for 5 years or more. According to the SUSTAIN and STEP clinical trial program, semaglutide demonstrated significant reductions in HbA1c and body weight in large placebo-controlled studies. The STEP 1 trial, published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2021, showed an average weight loss of about 14.9% of body weight over 68 weeks in people with obesity who did not have diabetes. Liraglutide, branded as Victoza or Saxenda, something that I wasn't as familiar with, was an earlier GLP-1 receptor agonist with a shorter duration of action requiring daily injections versus semaglutide's once-weekly formulation. And then one that is a little bit more popular of late, I would say tirzepatide, branded as Mounjaro and Zepbound. It's a dual agonist that targets both GLP-1 and GIP receptors. We're going to do a separate episode on the differences between these, but it's worth noting that the dual mechanism does appear to produce even greater weight loss in trials. What are the side effects, though, of GLP-1 receptor agonists? And this is important to discuss honestly. With all of these peptides, we have to discuss the side effects because it's not all rainbows and unicorns. The most common side effect reported in clinical trials and FDA labeling are gastrointestinal, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and constipation. And these tend to be most prominent when starting the medication right at the beginning or when increasing the dose. More serious but less common concerns include pancreatitis, though the causal relationship is still under study. There's also FDA black box warnings on some of the formulations related to thyroid C-cell tumors seen in rodent studies, though this has not been confirmed in human clinical data. Still, they are contraindicated in people with personal or family history of medullary thyroid carcinoma. And so there's emerging discussion around muscle mass loss during rapid weight loss with GLP-1, bone loss, and other things. And it's important to take these things into consideration. What about compound or research GLP-1 peptides? And this is where I have to be very clear. FDA approved semaglutide and liraglutide products go through rigorous manufacturing and clinical testing. And during drug shortages, compounding pharmacies have been permitted to produce copies under certain conditions. This is one of the reasons why you saw this humongous explosion after COVID and in the last couple of years. Separately, peptides marketed as research-only chemicals, not for human use, circulate in gray markets. These are not FDA regulated, not subject to the same purity or dosing standards, and could carry significant safety risks. I'll say this every time it comes up. The existence of compounded or gray market version of a peptide does not make it equivalent to a pharmaceutical grade product. It doesn't make it right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just out there. So what's the takeaway for today? Well, GLP-1 is a naturally occurring peptide that your body makes after you consume food. It regulates blood sugar, slows digestion, and suppresses appetite via both gut and brain mechanisms. Pharmaceutical versions are on the market. GLP-1 agonists are among the most studied medications for type 2 diabetes and obesity in recent history. Their side effect profiles are real. They must be discussed with your physician, but seem to be relatively minor for the most part in comparison to the positive effects of these peptides. In the next episode, we're going to talk about the differences between GLP-1, 2, and this emerging concept of GLP-3 because they're related but different in their functions and in their therapeutic applications. So, until then, talk to your doctor, stay curious, and come back for another Pep Talk with